Hey everybody, Graham here. This is part two of my series on Dianetics. I am reading the book so you don't have to. In part one, we covered the synopsis, which is sort of a general summary of what's coming in the rest of the book. And in this part, we're going to cover chapters 1 and 2. So let's just dive right in and see what we got. So the first section of the book is very modestly titled, The Goal of Man. Okay, so let's take a look at the goal of man. Chapter 1, the scope of Dianetics. So he's going to lay out what Dianetics is all about here. This is a lot of what I talked about in part 1 when I said that he makes a lot of claims to scientific rigor, but does not write with scientific rigor, i.e. he does not cite any sources or point to any research that could be verified and falsified. So, anyway, let's just dig into some of these parts that I've highlighted because I think these are the best parts. A science of mind is a goal which has engrossed thousands of generations of man. I'm not 100% sure that that's true. Certainly, over the centuries, people have had theories about how the mind works, but I don't know if I would call that a science of mind. But anyway, let's go on. Armies, dynasties, and whole civilizations have perished for the lack of it. Okay? Rome went to dust for want of it. China swims in blood for the need of it. And down in the arsenal is an atom bomb, its hopeful nose full armed in ignorance of it. You gotta give the guy credit for rhetoric. I mean, he's not shy about laying it on thick. Now, this next one is kind of interesting because it sort of highlights the fact that he was writing in, the book was published in 50, so he was probably writing this in, 1949. And this next passage, I don't think would pass muster today as being anything less than like absurdly racist. So, but yeah, check this out. Today, one finds the Aborigine of Australia substituting for a science of mind a magic healing crystal. The shaman of British Guiana makes shift for actual mental laws with his monotonous song and consecrated cigar. The throbbing drum of Goldie Medicine Man serves in the stead of an adequate technique to alleviate the lack of serenity and patience. What he's trying to say here is that people the world over are searching for a science of mind, but what he succeeds in saying is that, boy, aren't these native populations backward. Charitably, I kind of get where he's at, but from a 21st century perspective, yeah, that's not super cool. He goes on in this vein for a while, and then, okay, so now we get to the meat. Of what must a science of mind be composed? So this he's setting out the parameters here. This is what we're trying to achieve. An answer to the goal of thought. So why do we think? And what are we trying to do when we think? Number 2, a single source of all insanities, psychoses, neuroses, compulsions, repressions, and social derangements. So he believes that all mental illness and social disharmony should derive from a single source. Now, looking at that kind of skeptically, I don't see why there should necessarily be a single source there. The brain is pretty complex, and there's certainly plenty of places where it can break down. But Hubbard didn't really believe that the brain had a whole lot to do with this. So, moving on. Number 3, this is a good one. Invariant scientific evidence. Okay, I'm going to want to see it. As to the basic nature and functional background of the human mind. Okay. Number 4, techniques, the art of application by which the discovered single source, so referring to number 2 there, could be invariably cured, ruling out, of course, the insanities of malformed, deleted, or pathologically injured brains or nervous systems, and particularly iatrogenic psychoses, those caused by doctors involving the destruction of the living brain itself. Yeah, iatrogenic means caused by doctors. It's a good word to know, because if it ever pops up on anything medical that happens to you, you might have grounds for a malpractice suit. But what he's saying here is that anybody should be able to be cured of quote-unquote aberrations, provided that they have a healthy brain and nervous system. If you've got brain damage, then yeah, you've got problems. But if you don't have brain or nervous damage, you should be able to be cured. Now, this is interesting because I was watching an Aaron Smith-Levin video recently where he talked about how people who are born to Scientologist parents who have birth defects, who have Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or stuff like that, Scientology doesn't really care about them. They have damaged organic nervous systems, and so they can't really be helped. So, I mean, I have no basis for saying this other than speculation, but my suspicion is that I feel like if Hubbard had really sort of taken that out to its logical conclusion, he would have said that, maybe those people ought to be euthanized or something. But regardless, the point is that if you have a damaged brain, then Dianetics can't help you. But if you don't have a damaged brain and you just have some mental problems, you're a good candidate. Okay. Methods of prevention of mental derangement, sure. The cause and cure of all psychosomatic ills, which number, some say is a really nice weasel term. Who are some? 70% of man's listed ailments. I don't know where the list is, and I don't know how that was calculated. I don't know who some are, so I've got to take that claim with a huge grain of salt, because vague. Yeah, I didn't highlight this part, but it's pretty good. A science of mind, if it were truly worthy of that name, would have to rank in experimental precision with physics and chemistry. So you should be able to do experiments and come up with actual data, and the data should align as well as data in physics or chemistry with experiment. Again, if you're going to say this, I'm going to want to see the experimental data. Just saying. Now we're getting to the alleged benefits of Dianetics. So here we go. Simple though it is, Dianetics does and is these things. Number 1, it is an organized science of thought built on definite axioms, statements of natural laws on the order of those of the physical sciences. Again, we're going to want to see them. Number 2, it contains a therapeutic technique which can be treated. It contains a therapeutic technique with which can be treated all inorganic mental ills and all organic psychosomatic ills with assurance of complete cure in unselected cases. For all his talk about expressing things in plain language, he really likes to torture syntax here and grammar. I interpret this by saying Dianetics can treat all mental illnesses that are not caused by brain damage and all psychosomatic ills. And when he says with assurance of complete cure in unselected cases, it means you shouldn't have to cherry pick data here. It should work every time. Number 3, it produces a condition of ability and rationality for man in advance of the current norm, enhancing rather than destroying his vigor and personality. I think that this is a rejoinder to things like lobotomies and electroconvulsive therapy, which were big in the 40s and 50s. But what he's saying is that Dianetics should make you actively better, not just to get rid of the symptoms of your mental illness. Electroconvulsive therapy, as practiced in the 50s, would sort of shock you into being calm and things, but you'd lose some memories, and it would kind of blunt your personality, as I understand it. Electroconvulsive therapy is still done today, but it is much, much different than how it was done in the 40s and 50s. If you ever seen the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where Jack Nicholson's character gets electroconvulsive therapy, it's not like that anymore. They use much lower voltages, and they target specific areas of the brain, and it's a lot less damaging. And it is really only used in severe, severe cases of depression that will not respond to anything else. But I think I'm digressing here, but I think that's what the motivation for these particular points were. So, moving on. Number 4, Dianetics gives complete insight into the full potentialities of the mind, discovering the being well in excess of past suppression. So, you will free your mind, and you will become, your mind will just be so much better. Number 5, the basic nature of man is discovered in Dianetics. That's pretty great discovery. Rather than hazarded or postulated, since the basic nature can be brought into action in any individual completely, and that basic nature is discovered to be good. This is the 3rd or 4th time he's said something along those lines, that it's been scientifically proven that man is good, and I still have not seen any substantiation for that claim at all. Number 6, the single source of mental derangement is discovered and demonstrated on a clinical laboratory basis by Dianetics. Again, there should be data if that's true. Number 7, the extent, storage capacity, and recallability of the human memory is finally established by Dianetics. Data. Number 8, the full recording abilities of the mind are discovered by Dianetics, with the conclusion that they are quite dissimilar to former suppositions. This is, I think, where he's getting into engrams and the reactive mind. Number 9, Dianetics brings forth the non-germ theory of disease, complementing biochemistry and Pasteur's work on the germ theory to embrace the field. This is the bit about psychosomatic illnesses, where he said earlier that it is estimated, doesn't say by whom it's estimated, but it is estimated that 70% of illness is psychosomatic. The other 30% presumably is organic, which is where Pasteur's germ theory comes in. So what he's saying is that he's discovered something on a par with what Pasteur discovered, and actually his explains more. Okay. Number 10, with Dianetics ends the quote-unquote necessity of destroying the brain by shock or surgery to affect tractability in mental patients and adjust them. That's what I said earlier about lobotomies and ECT. Number 11, a workable explanation in the psychological effects of drugs and endocrine substances exists in Dianetics, and many problems posed by endocrinology are answered. Okay, looking forward to seeing that. Number 12, various educational, sociological, political, military, and other human studies are enhanced by Dianetics. That's a pretty vague claim. You could call just about anything enhancement. This I find a very interesting claim, number 13. The field of cytology is aided by Dianetics, as well as other fields of research. Cytology is the study of cells. And I have no idea where this is coming from. I have no idea how Dianetics relates to anything involving the cell. I'm really hoping he's going to elaborate on this later, because that's one of those things that just kind of stands out a little for me. It's like it throws out Scientology and you're just like, okay, wait, Scientology? All right. Okay, let's see where he's going with this. And that is the end of chapter 1. So that is the scope of Dianetics. This is what Dianetics is going to study, and this is what Dianetics is going to do. So now we're going to move to chapter 2. Okay, chapter 2, the clear. Dianetically, the optimum individual is called the clear. So I just highlighted this because this is sort of the basic thesis sentence. The goal in Dianetics is to make you clear. And he's going to explain in this chapter what being clear is. So I didn't highlight this part, but I just want to hit it quickly. Clear can be tested for any and all neuroses, psychoses, compulsions, repressions, and can be examined for any essentially psychosomatic diseases, etc., and so forth. So the idea is that you could test a clear for all of this stuff, and he'd be fine. He wouldn't show any of it. Further, these results can be obtained on a comparative basis. A neurotic individual possessed also of psychosomatic ills can be tested for those aberrations and illnesses, demonstrating that they exist. He can then be given Dianetic therapy to the end of clearing these neuroses and ills. Finally, he can be examined with the above results. This, in passing, is an experiment which has been performed many times with invariable results. It is a matter of laboratory test that all individuals who have organically complete nervous systems respond in this fashion to Dianetic clearing. So this is yet another claim of scientific rigor. He's saying this is invariable, meaning it works every time, and it has been demonstrated in the laboratory, and it just is. It is correct, it is obvious, it is demonstrated, it is scientific fact. And again, anytime he says it's scientific fact, I want to see the data. I want to see the lab report. I want to see how the experiment was conducted. I want to see the sample size. I want to see the control group. I want to see it double blind. All of the things that any other scientist would have to do to be taken seriously in their field, I want to see when he claims that this is the result of laboratory testing. Are we going to see any of this? I kind of doubt it. But again, we're only on chapter 2, so we'll see where he goes with it. So, moving on. So here's an example he gives. Glasses are seen on noses everywhere, around, even on children. The majority of these spectacles are perched on the face in an effort to correct a condition which the body itself is fighting to uncorrect again. Eyesight, when the stage of glasses is entered, not because of glasses, is deteriorating on the psychosomatic principle. So what he's saying here is that if your eyesight is deteriorating, it's because it's psychosomatic. There's nothing wrong with your actual eyes. It's your reactive mind that's causing you to not be able to see clearly. And that if you wear glasses, you're actually making it worse because you're just, I guess, like coddling your eyes or something. So now he's getting into hypnosis here. And he's trying to contrast hypnosis with Dianetic therapy. The hypnotic subject could be sent back to a moment entirely, so that he gave every appearance of being the age to which he was returned with only the apparent faculties and recollections he had at that moment. This was called revivification, reliving. Regression was a technique by which part of the individual's self remained in the present and part went back into the past. These abilities of the mind were supposed native only in hypnotism and were used only in hypnotic technique. So this was a thing that was popular in hypnosis when they thought that hypnosis was a lot more powerful than it actually is. But the idea was that a hypnotist could take you back to an earlier point in your life, and you could essentially relive it, and you would essentially be the person that you were at the time that the thing happened. So if you were a kid, you would talk like a kid and stuff like that. And he's saying Dianetic therapy is not this. And instead of regression, he calls it returning. And in this paragraph, which I didn't highlight, he talks about it. I'll just read this quick. Returning is substituted for regression here because it is not a comparable thing, and because regression as a word has some bad meanings which would interrupt its use. Reliving is substituted for revivification in Dianetics because in Dianetics the principles of hypnotism can be found, explained, and hypnotism is not used in Dianetic therapy, as will be explained later. So there you go. What he's saying is that returning if you're being audited, the auditor will say, okay, we're going to return to some time period. And the idea is that you are actually returning to that time. It's not a partial thing. It's not a hypnotic thing. It's a completely different thing altogether. You have perfect recall. It's just being suppressed because some of your dynamics are being blocked by engrams from your reactive mind. And through auditing, you can be returned to those times completely, not just hypnotically. All right, and here's one of my favorite parts. Man is good. Take away his basic aberrations, and with him go the evil of which the scholastic and the moralist were so fond. The only detachable portion of him is the evil portion, and when it is detached, his personality and vigor intensify. And he is glad to see the evil portion go, because it was physical pain. Later, there are experiments and proofs for these things, and they can be measured with the precision so dear to the heart of the physical scientist. So we are able to prove, apparently, that man is good and that evil can be detached from him so that he will be purely good, and that when this happens, he will just be more of himself. His personality and vigor intensify. So you will become more you, but without the evil part. So there you go. So finally he says, we have seen the goal of Dianetics here. Now let us inspect the goal of man. And that will be coming in part 3. So this is chapters 1 and 2. And I found this not quite as entertaining as the synopsis, just I think because he's getting into more detail. I am really kind of enthralled by his writing because his grammar is so torturous. I mean, God, let's invert every clause we can possibly invert. Let's make a million dependent subclauses and things. Oh my God. You gotta sit there and kind of work just to untangle some of his sentences. And I'm pretty good at that stuff. I'd hate to see like someone who was not as linguistically oriented as I am wrestle with that. That'd be really tough. Anyway, my main takeaway, as always, as it was with the synopsis, is all of this stuff about how all of this stuff is scientifically rigorous. It's been tested. It's been experimented. There's lab data and all of this. And like I said, I want to see the data. You know, show me the lab reports. You know, I did enough science in school to know what the scientific method is all about. And I want to see something that I could reproduce or falsify or When I say I mean, a scientist, someone with access to the specialized knowledge, equipment, and experimental techniques, go through all of this and verify it or not verify it. But I don't see so far any claims that if they can be verified, I don't see any data. There are no footnotes here. There's no references to anything or any kind of even description of the experimental process. So I would really like to see that. And I got a feeling I'm not gonna. But again, like I said, we're only on chapter 2. I'm keeping an open mind. If there is experimental data later on in the book, I will gladly point it out and we'll take a look at it. But there it is. Those are chapters 1 and 2, and this is the end of part 2 of the series. So next time we will look at the goal of man. So we will find out what the goal of our entire existence is all about. I think that's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Whatever the case, I will see you in the next one. I hope you're all doing great. I hope you're enjoying this series, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Graham out. Bye.